All right, welcome to our first case study, the Language Cafe. So if you are following along, the first thing you'll need to do is visit your Wanda space. From our last video, when we've created our template, we see that our AI sandbox is now populated in our Wanda space. What we need to do now to find our case study is again, create a new experience. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to look for AI Language Cafe. So once I click on this, it will launch our template. So the first thing you'll notice here, much like many of the other examples, is that we've already pre-populated the environment with a 360 skybox. We have our avatar, but we also have the prompt already completely filled out for you. So let's go ahead and test this out and see what the final product looked like.
Bienvenido al Café de Idiomas. ¿En qué puedo ayudarte hoy?
Okay, great. It looks like this waiter is speaking to us in Spanish. So let me try and respond back. Yo tengo mucho hambre.
Claro, estoy aquí para ayudarte. ¿Te gustaría ver el menú? Tenemos una variedad de platos deliciosos para elegir.
Okay, so I'm not a native Spanish speaker, so let me try something here. Hi, I'm sorry, I don't really speak Spanish that well. Do you happen to have a menu?
Por supuesto, aquí tienes el menú. Puedes echarle un vistazo y decirme qué te gustaría ordenar. ¿Necesitas alguna recomendación?
Okay, so I can see this is a pretty authentic experience that one might find in a actual Spanish speaking country. So what I want to do now is take a look at the prompt and see what's going on here. So if I zoom in here, I'll see our system prompt is filled out and we have one user message. So again, for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna just delete everything and we're gonna do it together from scratch. I am gonna leave this here. As you may have noticed, this is some boilerplate prompt that you should just keep in the system prompt. And let's completely delete everything. Okay, looks like we're all ready to go. Now, before I start anything, I want to take a big step back and think about what it is I want to create. What I want to do in this video is stress the methodology on how to approach prompting something like this. And you may notice there's some background noise from the environment. So what I'm going to go here and do is mute the background for the purposes of this video by muting the audio in our tab. Okay, that's better. So as I was saying, I want something that will help my students build vocabulary in a target language in an authentic context. Now, if that's my goal and I work backwards, I can start to create an outline or a structure of what I need. So I don't even need another program to do this, to brainstorm. I can just use the system prompt here as my sort of brainstorming canvas where I can record my thoughts. So the first thing I know I'll need is a role. So I'm gonna write that as your role. And you may have noticed this sort of structure in front of some of our prompts. What these are delimiters or separators. Here I'm using hashtags to sort of tell the AI model, quote unquote, tell the AI model, this is very important text. Make sure you pay attention to it. It's special. It's a header, it's a title of some sort. And in this case, our hashtag your role is going to be our persona prompting pattern. The other thing I probably know I'll need is a task. So I'm going to use the same structure here with the delimiters or separators and call it your task. Here I'll probably later add some goals or objectives underneath there. I know I'll probably need a vocabulary list, so I'm going to add that. I know I will probably also need a scenario, obviously, so I'll add that. Okay, so we now have a nice little outline here. You can think of these again as headers in an outline: your role, your task, a vocabulary list, and a scenario. This may change or may not. I'm not sure yet. The point is we can really quickly iterate and refine as we go. So let me start with our role. So what do I want to write here? I'm going to write, you are an expert Spanish teacher that loves to role play with students by taking on different identities and never breaking character. This sounds like a really good Spanish teacher I once had. When provided with a list of vocabulary words, you will begin to enact a scenario in which your goal is to converse with a, let's go with a beginner level Spanish student. So you'll see in this first part of our system prompt here, we have a couple things. We have the persona pattern, we have the audience pattern here, and we want to do is sort of, again, fill out the rest of the your task, which will sort of simulate this other persona pattern that we learned, which is the flipped interaction, right? So we have our persona, they're going to flip the interaction or ask our users some sort of questions. So under task, I'm going to add, you will be given a, and I'm going to capitalize vocabulary list here because I almost want the AI model to be like, okay, there's a vocabulary list, where do I find it? And it's sort of going to hopefully find it here. You will be given a vocabulary list and I'm going to capitalize the S in scenario as well. You will role play as the person I tell you in this scenario and incorporate all the words in the vocabulary list. So I'm being consistent with my capitalization. And how do I want this done? I want this done in a conversational way. Okay, so that looks good. And so this brings me to a vocabulary list. So how am I going to get one? Even though, again, I'm not a Spanish teacher, I don't particularly know much about Spanish. What I'll probably do is go to ChatGPT outside of this recorded window here. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, give me a list of 20 words from English to Spanish that relate to a cafe setting. And so once I have that list here, I'm basically just going to come here and copy and paste it. And you see we have cafe, te, menu. Okay, so this is probably good enough for our purposes here. And the last thing I need to do is describe my scenario. So what is my scenario going to be? It is going to be, you are a waiter and I am a customer of a restaurant. Actually, let's go with a cafe named The Language Cafe. Okay, great. There are very few customers and I have just arrived to place an order. You notice that I am not a native Spanish speaker. Let's see what we get from our model once we just have that and see how it goes. Now, all of this is within my system prompt here, as we can see. But I do want to do something a bit different, as we've already done quite a bit. And this is to create the experience such that when a user visits this URL, clicks on the waiter avatar, it will immediately ask something of the user. And so in the me or the user text box here, I'm going to add something. I'm going to add begin the conversation by greeting me and welcoming me to the Language Cafe. The Language Cafe. And you know what? Let's say in Spanish only, just to double check and make sure Our AI model only speaks Spanish. And do not translate anything into English unless asked. Okay, so let's try that. And let's just submit that and see in our test AI character settings. Okay, so we'll see that we're getting a pretty good response here. Again, I'm going to delete this language cafe waiter, which is our AI's response, so that when the AI avatar is clicked on, this is the last message that will be in its sort of conversation history, and it'll start with that introduction. Now, one other thing here is that there is a language setting. And for the purposes of this case study, it's not English, it's set to Spanish. And the reason we do this is going to sort of help our AI model be better at speaking and understanding Spanish, but especially Spanish that may not be perfect, meaning a beginner is going to have some mistakes in how they pronounce things. And by selecting our language here, we're going to make sure that our AI model is able to understand that. So what I'm going to do now is test this. So I'm going to go up to my tab here, unmute the background noise of the busy cafe. I'm going to hit save. You'll see our old chat histories here. I'm going to just refresh the conversation.
Bienvenido al Café de Idiomas. ¿En qué puedo ayudarte hoy?
Okay, and now we're back to that initial goal, that initial state we had at the beginning of the video. This is great. Now, one thing I want to point out is just how good generative AI is. So the generative and generative AI can be really well understood from this example by looking at just how lean and bare the prompt is, how easily we were able to do this. And we can have potentially a very long, authentic, real conversation for students to have with a simulated native Spanish speaker. And so what you can do now to go forward is to think about, how might we change this? How might you do something with French? How might you do something with German or Finnish, or try multilingual and try a language that's not actually on this list here and see what kind of things that you can get. As usual, have fun and good luck.